Welcome to the 24th Annual D.I.C.E Awards conversation on Sports Game of the Year. This is an interesting cross-section of game makers, and I'm excited to be in the room with creators that cover such a wide range of game types. While you're all nominated for the Sports Game of the Year, let's get ready and get into the introductions. So first up, we have from EA Sports FIFA 21, Ionel Stănescu. How are you doing?
Really good. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be part of this conversation and part of the nominees. So excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm really excited to rock with you and talk a little bit more about FIFA today. We also have from PGA Tour 2K21, Sean West and Josh Muse.
I'm excited to be here as well. It's great to be in a room with all the great nominees here.
Yeah, likewise. Couldn't be more excited to get the invite to come in and have a chat with everybody today. Really looking forward to it.
Cool. Excited to have you both. I've definitely been on the virtual link, so we have lots of things to talk about for sure. And I'm also really curious, before we move on, what about you? How did you kind of get into the roles, both you and Josh?
I started at HB Studios, the developer for PGA Tour 2K21, about 10 years ago in QA, and worked through some production opportunities, eventually landing a senior producer role on this franchise. And, golf has been a huge part of my past and playing through high school and in my adult life, and during COVID as well. It's one of the few things I was able to get outside and do. So it's been really cool being able to work with 2K as a publisher and the PGA Tour to bring this game to consoles around the world.
Fantastic.
And for me, I mean, I've been with HB probably over 13 years now, which is shocking to me when I think back to it. So a good long part of my life, but very fortunate to have found the company early on and have had, an awesome run with them and been able to just make great games. I'm a huge sports fan, multi-sport athlete growing up. Golf is one that I'm kind of slowly coming back to. Admittedly, we don't get a full calendar year of summer weather here. So I have to be pretty selective about my summer activities, but that's what we lean on Sean for. Sean is certainly our resident expert who's out there, chasing scratch. And I suppose my role is to keep him honest and make sure that we're still making golf accessible for everyone and not just the hardcores.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't want to leave you out of that conversation. Share a little bit about, how you got into the role as well.
Well, a similar path for me as well. I started working in EA, I think a little over 10 years ago. Similarly, I started with QA, just trying to get into game development, as a lot of my peers as well. So that was my entry into the industry. I've been working on FIFA for the past 6 and something years. I keep losing track, so apologies if I'm not very specific here, but very similarly, I've never played golf, but I've played a ton of football or soccer for our North American fans. So can't enjoy it during lockdown, sadly, but the vaccine is here. We'll pick it up again. But yeah, really excited to build a game around the sport that I've grew up with and that I've loved and been passionate about all my life. So it's really a dream job for me, to be honest.
I love that. And last but not least, we have from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, Cameron Lee. How are you doing, Cameron?
Good. Yeah. Thanks for having me here. It's fantastic. Like everyone said, it's great to be part of all these nominees, and it's a real honor to represent the studios that sort of work on the titles that we have.
Share a little bit about how you got into the role as well. Being VP of production is a thing that you work your way up into making that part of the role. Give a little information about that.
I've done development on the game team side for close to 20 years, and it's been a fantastic journey. What I love about the current role at Activision is being able to work with so many different teams. They're all so talented, and the games that we create in this modern time is it often involves multiple teams, and such a huge effort from everyone involved, both from the developers and the support teams, the back end, and so being in a position where I can interface with all those people is really rewarding.
Awesome. Before we jump into our conversation, we want to give some love to the folks over at NBA 2K21 and MLB The Show, who unfortunately could not make it to our conversation today, but are also nominated as well for this year in terms of Game of the Year in the sports space. first question I want to poke everybody with is, what are some of the best games or moments in each one of your individual sports, and kind of how did you experience, and how did those experiences kind of inspire you in parts of the development of the game that you've made? I'm going to go to you first, Cameron, because we have a very interesting space in the kind of skateboarding space, where X Games is a huge part of where we see a lot of the conversation happen in terms of competition in some of those parts. What are some of the kind of biggest moments in the space that have kind of influenced this reemergence of the Tony Hawk?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And look, I'd say with skating in particular, skating is really even though it's a big, audience sport these days, it's still fundamentally like an individual sport.
Yeah.
As kids get out and skate, and I remember being a kid going out and skating, right, with a couple of mates. And for me, that's what I remember, right? So making stupid, ramps out of bad wood, and falling off it. That's the kind of stuff that I think inspires Tony Hawk, pro skater. It's that original sense of just doing what you want to do, and that's reflected in the levels that we create, right? Where you can sort of, it's free skating around in the levels, and then the handling it. Although admittedly in Tony Hawk pro skater, it's very much crazy, kind of like Superman skater kind of feel to it, rather than being super realistic in simulation. But yeah, for me, being an old skater, it's just really fun to get back in there and just look at those levels and just have that feeling of just cruising around with friends.
Yeah. For 2K21, in terms of the golf space, Josh and Sean, I'm curious about like what that looks like from your perspective. I know that there are multiple parts of the year where there are huge games, huge tournaments that come up, and you have those individual moments that kind of spark the inspiration there. What are some of your thoughts around how that works for all of you with the games you've made? I'll start off with you, Josh, on that one.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's okay. I should have jumped in.
No,
I
no
think for
worries.
me, I'm going to lean into kind of the piece that gets me most excited about what we've been able to accomplish in our franchise so far, and looking at golf as a sport too, is that, kind of like Cameron said with skating, like, it's a one single player sport. Ultimately golf is too. Sure, you can compete against the field, but like the courses take on a personality of themselves as well, as do conditions. So that changes on a week to week basis, year to year basis, and even day to day basis. So, I mean, like golfers can go out on a Monday, play great, on a Tuesday, really struggle. Wednesday, they think they can finish it all. And then, like it can kind of fall apart over time. So what we've done is kind of given players the ability to really dig into the creation side of golf as well as the playing side. So for us, it was kind of taking a holistic look at golf and not just necessarily focusing in on the tournament side of it, but also deep creation tools and letting people kind of impart their will on course creation, getting in there, then playing their creations, sharing those with their friends, and having that kind of grassroots level of golf play, not just the tournament side. And I think the tournament side is hugely important. I think that, it's drama on every level, like every professional sport. It's probably something that'll come up with all of us here. Like, even looking back at this past weekend, hometown kid 3 feet away from the hole to win a tournament, misses it, goes to a like, if we put that in a game, people would be like, that is so fabricated and unrealistic. That would never happen. But that's the real sport. And that's the beauty of, I think, making sport that gives us so much freedom in this space, is that like it's unscripted and it's so exciting week on week. But for me, I guess the exciting part was finding a kind of a unique way to empower users to, build courses, put personality into that side, also build up their player, build up their skills, play the course. But it's kind of that juxtaposition between the two, is, struggling against the elements and trying to go low.
Sean, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think just kind of leaning into what Josh said about the day-to-day change of playing golf. You could play one day your best round and the next can be your worst. That's something we leaned into a lot, and trying to rebuild the authenticity of what it's like to play golf, the physics and everything that goes into it. You could play similar in our game, the best round of your life, and 2 minutes later have the worst shot of your life. So we really built the franchise on that experience and trying to recreate the simulation of what it's like to play golf on any given course. And over the years, we've built on that experience, opening up the accessibility of it as well, creating easier and more approachable experience for more of a casual user base. But I think at the base of it, we really started on kind of that hardcore simulation aspect, and we really grew from there into what we are today with 2K21.
Yeah,
If I can just
yeah,
riff on that really
please.
quickly, like the drama that you mentioned, in sport, I think is so crucial to talk about, because it's easy for us to forget that we are representing like real athletes in that. So yeah, it's often about us, like I talked about originally, like, as the old skater, but also, the athletes that we represent, in our games. For Tony, we had a lot of the original crew. We had all the original crew come back, but then also, all the new skaters, which is a global, new global set. And I know that that's the same with all of the other sports here as well. And so just being able to represent those people is super cool, because they're just also amazing with what they do. And the drama that they must feel in their sport is so hard to represent in games, but if you can do it, that's fantastic.
I mean, you all have the kind of semi-difficult task in balancing out the super simulated version of the game that a lot of fans have come to kind of will poke you at and say, hey, this didn't feel right. Physics here didn't feel good, or some of those things didn't necessarily jive with that way. Cameron, you have the kind of opposite effect of going super wild and kind of abandoning, realism in that way. What's the challenge?
Don't try this at home kind of moments. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the balance of, making sure that you're satisfying multiple parts of the ecosystem and the folks of saying, on the pitch, we need the ball to feel exactly like this when it comes off the foot, or, when you're kind of on the fairway, making sure that when you hook a ball, it actually feels like it's hooking in the way that you have that expectation for. Y'all know, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about that, because I'm sure in a game that has so many people watching it and so many people playing it from so many different parts of the world, I'm sure you get a lot of messages about how things are working and not necessarily kind of making those connections. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about, balancing out that real versus digital version of the game that you've made.
Yeah, don't get me started on the comments, because you're exactly right. It's such a popular sport that I think even once you dive into various cultures and subcultures, it means and it feels different for each of us. So for us, obviously, we set out every time to recreate the sport as accurately as possible. I'm not smart enough to go into the physics, so I won't do that. But the amazing thing about sports is that it's so easy for someone to just tell if something feels right, or on the contrary, if it feels off, right? To your point, I shoot the ball, I expect a certain outcome. I hit an ollie or whatever, I expect a certain outcome, right? Even though I can't execute on that in real life, for example. So for us, it's about making sure that we equip players with the right tools, and that we build those tools authentically. To allow them to create those magical moments on the pitch, right? I can't score a bicycle kick in real life. I'll probably break my hip, but I can do that in a game of FIFA, right? So making sure that all those elements really work together to create a situation or multiple situations which feel authentic to the sport, but are also feeding into that fantasy that we all have, to make sure that we execute a certain trick, or that we score a goal from 30 yards out, or really everything that you can imagine of, because that's something that I don't think you get in a lot of games, but you do get in sports games, as an example, that comparison to real life. So I think making sure that you equip the players with the right tools to execute those fantasies, if you will, is definitely something that's a priority for us every year, for sure.
And just to run on that. Sorry.
Yeah, please.
If I can run one thing on it, like fully agree with what you both said, because I think what's interesting in sport in particular is sport is accessible. Like, you can touch sport, you can play it, and a lot of people do. And video games, by extension, I think there's an expectation of what something is or isn't right, is kind of the word that you use. But in reality, like, we're taking superhuman versions of athletes who are performing at the highest level. And when putting them into a game, a lot of the time, I think I could probably speak for the group, the one-to-one interpretation of that data does not make for a great experience necessarily. So that's kind of where the art and the science have to meet, is it still ultimately has to function in the confines of a game where, like, we're in a very deep physics-based sport with golf.
Mm.
And I can't tell you the number of times we've gone out, we've flown a plane over a golf course, we've flown drones over a golf course, we've recreated that course in full fidelity down to 1 centimeter of resolution. And then you play the course and you're like, it's too hard. I should be scoring better on this. And you're like, well, that's because the people who perform well on this are the best players in the world. So like there's that learning curve. So I think sports offers a fun kind of, bookends in a way where players can come in at that entry point where they can execute those fantastic moves with some levels of assistance. But then if they are seeking that true, very, very difficult simulation experience to really push it to the extremes, that's also available. And I think that gives players a real insight into just how good these athletes are.
I think it also inspires people to push their own boundaries as well. So when you've got the, and this, to answer your original question around like what's the sort of balance that you have to strike, particularly with a game like Tony where it's sort of like a little bit crazy. Yeah, it's crazy, but there's real people who are playing it and then getting inspired around, well, okay, I can't do that, but hey, maybe if I try, I'll find something, right? And so I think there's been some inspiration over the years, at least with our title, and I'm sure with other titles. Same with like the scissor kick, right? Like, can you do it? I don't know, give it a shot, try it, right? Like push your own boundaries. And I think over time that pushes the boundaries of the sport, which is super cool that games can potentially influence the sport and not just the other way around.
Yeah, and I love the points that you all hit, because it is, even myself as a huge sports fan of multiple different games and different types of sports, I have often talked a little bit of junk about like, why isn't this working in this way? And why should it's not doing the thing that I thought it was? And then I go and try to do it and I'm like, oh, that's right. I used to work in IT and I don't do that in my arms. I have like all those things play into, my actual like remembrance of my actual human body and what I've been able to do over the past couple of years. And how, again, we are talking about folks who have been doing this since they were kids and have grown to be these uber athletes in that way. I'm curious about that, even from from the PGA side of it. You know, it's a sport where the boundaries of getting into it are a little bit different than you would say probably even from a competitive sport that is even larger in terms of scale. Like FIFA is a very much a worldwide sport in that way, and so is golf. But the way that those kind of machinations work are very, very different from a gamer standpoint. Do you find like the folks you have in the ecosystem, folks who are playing the game now, are kind of gamer fans who are coming to golf, or are they golf fans who are coming to games and experiencing that game and trying to breathe life into their digital versions of themselves because they weren't necessarily able to do that in their human real life forms? Do you feel like that's a part of the conversations when you're seeing the folks who are kind of coming to that game?
I definitely think it's a mix of both. The more you see golf culture becoming kind of spread around the world, you see things popping up like mini putt areas, like Top Golf, for example, where you can go out and have a drink with a few friends and hit a golf ball at a target. I think those type of casual experiences are helping introduce new and younger people to the sport who wouldn't necessarily go out and pay 50 or $100, whatever, to go play a round of golf on a 9 or 18 hole course. So I think all of those are great things for getting people introduced to the sport and eventually finding their way to a course if they find themselves having fun at something like that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts to that, Josh? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think Sean nailed it, and it's no secret. Golf has been as you said, a tough to get into sport, for a myriad of reasons, kind of through its history. And I think now seeing motivation and a push from organizations like PGA Tour, who we're lucky to partner with, and seeing that it's at the grassroots level that they're trying to expand the game as well, I think that really helps us in our case, and we're viewed as an extension of that kind of movement, to skew younger, get more kids into it and playing. And I think we've seen both. We've seen families, we've been on site at PGA Tour events where admittedly, like, it's a different vibe than I had anticipated. And I think that's a good thing. I had a lot of preconceived notions when we started working with Tour that it was going to be kind of going to be an organization that I think I anticipated being a lot more, traditional in some of their operations, and we got on site, and they are really trying to make an effort to broaden the game, bring more people into it, and find different entry points and more casual versions of the sport itself, like Sean had touched on, to really try and broaden that base. Because ultimately, they want to get as many people out on a course playing a version of golf as they can. Because it's a good social experience when you can get out there with a bunch of friends, have a good time, and take that lighthearted approach. And you've even seen it at the pro level, which has been interesting if you followed the sport the last few years. So things like the matches where you see pro players team up with superstar athletes, where Woods is playing with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady comes out, and like you're seeing a much softer side of golf the last couple of years. And I think that it's endearing. It's kind of taking down that very rigid facade that may have been built up historically in that space. And I think that that's really good for the game.
Yeah, we still haven't seen anyone really excited to pair with Charles Barkley, but I understand those reasons.
Why
from a golf
not?
perspective.
Right? That's like, if you want content and views, I mean, the man is so passionate about the sport. He seems like such a good, like fun-loving fellow. Like,
Yeah,
you better believe it's on our radar. We would love to try and like see more of that out on the course, because absolutely, for all the reasons mentioned, like what a character.
hey, if you can put the Charles Barkley swing in the game for next year, I'm totally down for that. I don't know how well you're going to play, but I think it might work. Yana, I'm curious to hear, and of course, anyone else who this would kind of apply to, building out an annual franchise is extremely difficult. And I'm curious about what the kind of biggest pressure you wind up finding yourselves having, trying to make sure that the fans are feeling like they're getting something new every year, while also kind of staying true to the core of the game, while also building out new parts to kind of get them excited about the next version of it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and it's definitely a topic that you can talk about, I think, for hours, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think going to your first point, I think one of the biggest pressure points for us is that we are an annual release, and come a particular date that we typically announce a few months in advance, that's a day we have to hit, right? That's a commitment we have to meet to our players. So that's definitely a big pressure point for us. Of course, we also have the added pressure of FIFA becoming such a huge and popular game throughout the years, that we're no longer just competing with other sports games, as an example, but we're also competing for people's time, especially in a fall launch window, when you get the new Call of Duties, you get the whatever new season of Fortnite coming out, and everything you can think of in the gaming industry in general. Right now, with the COVID lockdown, I think competing for people's time has been something that we're starting to be even more aware of, since there's only so many hours in a day, right, to dedicate to video games. I put a lot of hours in, but I'm sure other people's are finding it a bit more difficult than I am. So that's another aspect of it. And two, to your point, how do you bring a value proposition that makes a new purchase worthwhile, that makes that transition worthwhile for players? Because you only get so much time to iterate, and so much time to draw up a particular concept, and only so much time to ideate on an idea, really, that for one needs to innovate, and for two needs to still stay authentic to the sport, as my webcam is not doing a good job to stay focused on me. Yeah, I think that's also a real struggle for sports games in general, that not a lot of genres actually face. Just having to innovate while also staying true to the source of your inspiration, to be honest. So those are three big items that we hit every time we need to develop a new FIFA title.
Yeah. Cameron, I'm curious to hear about that from a nostalgia perspective. You have a very difficult thing to kind of pull back in with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, where you have a lot of expectations from folks who played the games prior, and now they're like, we have this new thing that we're going to play. It needs to feel like this, or it needs to feel like that. What were some of the challenges there?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's been 21 years since the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1, and you said, rightly so. I mean, there was a lot of demand from fans for a long time, and so you have to do it right. And so doing it right means being super authentic to the original, vision and source material. So for us, that's like levels, handling, soundtracks, skaters. But 21 years is a big leap, and so the team really wanted to leverage the new platforms and technology to bring THPS into modern gaming. And so specifically, some of the things we did was bringing across the original level geo, right? So you really had to think about the original skate lines that people would take. And so having that geometry, from the original games, in this new one, makes that authentic. And then there's the handling, like I mentioned. Handling is difficult though for a remake so many years into the future. So 21 years. So the controllers are just fundamentally different. And so the team though was like such hardcore fans that they could take the feel of the original, even onto new sticks with the controllers and like recreate that feel for authenticity. So that was like really good. So having fans on the team was really important. Other things like the focus on graphics, right? So recreating all of the art, the team had to look at like the whole set of art. This is not like just a simple up-res. This is like recreation of everything. So all the new textures, 4K lighting, new animations. So the animations had to feel really snappy for a game like Tony. And then, so that kind of like all gives you this really good like attention to detail throughout the levels. Other challenges, right? So the cast, we go back to the athletes, right? So the original athletes, and the skaters were in the game, but we needed to bring in new people. I mean, again, 21 years, right? So, who are the people out there pushing the boundaries of the sport and skating that we wanted to bring in? And then finally, I'd add the original Tony didn't have a tutorial, right? So, I mean, that games play differently. There's fundamentally just like different experiences these days compared to 21 years ago. And so having a tutorial to help people on board from, the old nostalgic feeling and that sort of rose-colored glasses about how things play, to this new authentic experience was really important because we wanted to bring across new people, not just the old people who, we feel like we sort of nailed with the authenticity point that I mentioned. So it was a challenge, but the team did really, really well.
Yeah, it felt like the reception from the audience was fantastic, and it continues to be about just how much people love that game and remembered, and how well that has all kind of worked for the team. So excited to hear more about what that's going to look like in the future if more Tony Hawk games wind up being a thing. But for now, I get the wonderful privilege of giving out our award for Sports Game of the Year, and our winner is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. Congrats,
man. That's incredible. You guys nailed it. I'm so stoked for you. That series, everything you just said about like that balance, you smoked it. Like such a job well done. It was such a joy to go back and play that game. Awesome job.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I mean, it really is an honor for me to be able to represent like all of the developers across the company who work on the title. They're amazingly talented, and they apply that talent like so passionately to this game. They really deserve all of the thanks that I could possibly give them. Across the board, everyone involved in the title. I think it's worth calling out Tony Hawk as well. I mean, the game wouldn't be what it is without Tony. His feedback and attention to detail and collaboration throughout the whole development is really important. It makes a big difference. Again, big thanks to the original skaters, the new skaters. It wouldn't be this game without them. They're all such incredible athletes. And then finally, and this, I'm sure you guys all know this, but I want to say it because it's really important. A special thanks to the family and the friends and the fans of the teams. It's so like the level of support and encouragement that the developers get from people around them. It's unseen, but it's so crucial to making games. And so I just wanted to make that point as well. So huge thanks to the team, huge thanks to the friends and family as well.
Well, thank you again for those lovely and kind words. And again, yes, absolutely. The families are the backbone of all of this. They continue to help push everyone forward and give us that encouragement to make all the wonderful stuff that we make, and all the stuff that you have made in this category has been fantastic. So Yonel, John, Sean, and Cameron, thank you so much for being here. Our wonderful friends from NBA 2K and MLB The Show, we are thinking of you as well. Thank you so much for being here. And again, so much for the games you've made and put out into the world.